Oh, hello. Welcome to the Consistent OK podcast. My name is Luke and I am joined by Nick, the main man good. We're doing an in-depth episode. We're still talking about the Kevin Smith Askew universe films, and this one is Zack and Miri Make a Porno. So let's dive on into our nearly the end of these in-depth episodes and Zack and Miri Make a Porno. Zack and Miri Make a Porno. We are nearing the end of the line. So this film is directed by Kevin Smith and it's written by Kevin Smith. It wasn't necessarily going to be one of his View Askew universe films, but then he kind of tied it together. Jay Silent Bob the Reboot, which we'll come to on the next in-depth episode. But it is it has Seth Rogen as the lead character, playing the lead character, and Elizabeth Banks, both of those people. So that's why this film is very nice. And it came out in 2008. So many years ago now, which is odd because it really doesn't feel like it's that old of a film.
No, although I thought watching it, it's sort of one of the last films, like last sort of romantic comedy type things before like smartphones and social media. Like it's before that all sort of boomed.
Yeah, because it's because 2010, 11 and stuff, wasn't it? That's when all that shit started happening.
Yeah, like I think the first iPhone was like 2007, maybe.
Yeah.
So, and it would have been shot in like 2007. So
I kind of just remember it coming out around like the same time as a lot of these sort of films had come out. This was like the more raunchier thing because we'd had Knocked Up and Super Bad and 40-Year-Old Virgin, all kind of came around these few years. So it kind of felt, and obviously had a few, like 40-Year-Old Virgin had both Seth Rogen and Elizabeth Banks in it as well. So it feels like it kind of came out around that time, which is, I did read that Kevin Smith thought this was going to be like his big, like, money maker of the film, basically. But it just didn't make the money that it was going to make because he thought Jude Apatow, is it?
Judd Apatow.
Judd Apatow, yeah. He'd done obviously all of his films have been very successful, so he thought this would like be a home run because it would be like kind of similar casting, similar comedy, but more of like R-rated in a way. But it wasn't to be. It did. It was budgeted for 24 million. It made 42 million. I think I remember reading that he thought he was going to do upwards of like 80 to 100 million, which would have been a very big return. But it didn't do the numbers, and I don't really know why, because I really like this film. It doesn't it doesn't stand the test of time, as in like if I sit down with some people like, we need to watch Zack and Miri Make a Porno, whereas I would sit down and be like, what we should watch for shits and giggles, Clerks II. So it doesn't do that, but I've only seen it twice. I saw it at the cinema, and I saw it when I watched it now a few weeks ago. And I liked it just the same as I liked it the first time. Like, it's just a good film. It's a very much a Seth Rogen film. Like, I'm watching a TV show at the moment on Apple called Platonic with him in and Rosa Bryn. Fuck me in surnames, eh? Just, what's the point in them? We'll just call everyone by their first name. And that is like, obviously it's not like this, but it has like, it's got like it's like a bit rude in places, everything. So it's very much a Seth Rogen thing. Like, it feels like he's like the perfect casting for this thing. And he does very well with his female leads. Like, I think that when I've seen him in like Bad Neighbors and everything like that, he seems like he's really good to work with, and the chemistry he has with Elizabeth Banks in this is like you kind of really believe they actually could love each other in real life. Outside of this film. You like the film, Nick?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I've always really enjoyed it. It was kind of when we decided to do the in-depth, it was a real kind of like toss-up whether I suggested Zack and Miri or not, because it's very loose tie to Reboot. But the character that appears in Reboot, I've just always loved that scene. Like, it's just ridiculous. And I think you're right that this does feel very Seth Rogen, but I think it at the same time it's also very Kevin Smith. It's like the two sort of perfectly align.
Well, it's kind of like Kevin Smith. It's almost, I mean, I don't know this, but it's almost like the part Seth Rogen plays was written for him. Like, how people, how Kevin Smith is big on, he writes a lot of roles, like James Gunn, right? They write roles for certain people, like they already have them in mind. I wrote this part with like Jeff Anderson in mind and all this stuff. It feels like he knew he was going to cast Seth Rogen as he was writing it almost.
Just because some of the dialogue, as we've said throughout, like all this Kevin Smith stuff, is great. Like there is a lot of punchy dialogue and it's a lot of back and forth and stuff. Especially between Seth Rogen and Elizabeth Banks, like their dialogue really does play off each other constantly. And then even just like some of the supporting characters and stuff, some of the pieces of dialogue you get, like Jane Muse's character and stuff, it's great. But yeah, I really enjoy it because it's just such an unusual film. Like it's not your kind of typical guy meets girl, falls in love rom-com. It is a very specific sense of humor, I think.
I think that's what a lot of people felt about it, didn't they? Like it didn't quite hit home run with the language, I guess.
Because it's like, I don't think it feels out of place as being a View Askew film, because there are things in it which I'm like, oh, that could totally happen in a View Askew thing. Like the like anal bit where they're filming that I feel like is equal to like a donkey show where it's just like, what the fuck. And there are other things in it where you're just like, how do you land on this? Like, how do you get there? And it's got that pop culture side as well, like the fact that the first thing they make is basically a Star Wars porno.
Star Wars parody,
What's
it called? Star Wars.
Yeah, Star Wars, and so you can kind of see those like View Askew things in it where it's like, it still wears pop culture on its sleeve and it's still got the kind of more disgusting areas that View Askew can kind of go into. But then you do also get these heartfelt moments, like the sex scene between Zack and Miri. I've always thought it was really well done because it's like two people who have kind of fallen in love, but they've decided to make a porno, and that's the first time they have sex. And there's like a weird chemistry there and stuff. So I was glad that we did include it, because watching it back, I was just like, it is an interesting one that, even though it isn't necessarily fully tied to View Askew films and it's not set in New Jersey, it just feels like it slots in nicely. Because it is just a good, easy film, I think.
I mean, for those of you who don't know, if you're listening, you've not seen this yet, I might as well tell you what the film is actually a little bit about. So it's essentially two friends, and they have no money left. So believe it or not, they're named Zack and Miri, and they decide they're going to make pornos basically. And and it kind of goes. So there's a group of people in the cast around them, and they're trying to make this film, and they hit all these bumps along the way, basically trying to get this out there. And there's a lot of awkward moments, and there's a lot of gratuitous language. Just stay away from the big words. And they like we've already said, like they're in love with each other, which is the sort of like underlying thing throughout this whole film. and it's just a really nice, even with all the language, it's still a really nice film. It's like a
Yeah,
raunchy rom-com,
yeah.
not raunchy, or yeah, like a
Yeah,
vulgar rom-com, I
yeah,
guess. So,
like,
but there's, I
yeah.
mean, I love all the cast around them as well. Like,
Hmm.
it's funny seeing Jay like in
Yeah,
another role.
yeah.
Like, it's so odd, and I know they touch upon it, don't they? Because they say there's, well, it's an outtake, I think, in Clerks 3. I read
Oh, is it?
that he says he says he has a cousin called Lester who does porn, but now he does OnlyFans now instead. So, but Kevin Smith kept it out of Clerks 3.
Uh,
But it's funny to see him in a role like that compared to
yeah.
what we're so used to seeing him in. So,
I
but
thought it was the same with like Jeff Anderson as well. Like Jeff Anderson is like the videographer, like the cinematographer, and he's
yeah,
filming and stuff. And then in Clerks 3, you've got Randall making a film.
yeah,
And also there is a bit of Clerks in this that it's like they film a porno in the place they work.
yeah,
It's like the raunchier side of Clerks, essentially, that it's like rather than just filming a normal film, they're going to film a porno.
yeah.
But yeah,
It's
I
a nice
just
thing about the cast as well, isn't it? Because the nice thing about the cast is like it's kind of like a theatre production as well. Like your role can change at any time. You could be the lead, but also then you could be like a really sporting character, so like Jeff Anderson being the weatherman in Dogma, right?
yeah.
Like it's like they're backing up each other because everyone's going to get their time to shine. I
Mhm.
know Seth Rogen wasn't in anything before this, but I mean, easily, again, he could have had two actors that he's known a million times that have had some minor roles and they get a bigger role, right?
Yeah,
Um, so it's I like the cast. I really like Craig Robinson. I think he's very funny.
so good.
Um,
Yeah, his like delivery on
he's very over the top, but he's very good.
yeah, his delivery on comedic lines is amazing. His Black Friday joke
Yes,
always
so good,
kills me.
so
Um,
good.
it is just genius. And then like yeah, my favorite scene, which is the one with the character from Reboot, is Justin Long. Like he just absolutely kills me in this film. I don't know what it
Yeah,
is.
he's good.
Every time I see him in it, he just absolutely slays me. And I think it's the whole setup for that scene as well, like the whole cranny panties thing, and the fact he's like, "You're famous." It's just so ridiculous. Um, and I just think it's gold. And then you've also got Brandon Routh as like
Yeah,
the stud.
as the Jay's what's he, Bobby Long, isn't he?
Yeah, I just find that whole thing such a brilliant setup. Like that again feels like something that's in View Askew, where it's like somebody who's gone to a high school reunion who wanted to hook up with like the most popular person in the school later in life, and then it turns out that most popular person is either gay or like married or whatever, and you've got no chance, and you just make an absolute fool of yourself.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just those scenes just absolutely kill me. I just think they're great.
Was
Yeah.
was this before or after he did Superman?
After by like
A while, because
yeah, I
that
think
must have been 2006 or something,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So it would have been like a couple of years.
It's funny, like he pops up in these random things because he's obviously in Scott Pilgrim as well.
He's great in Scott
Um,
Pilgrim. God, that's a good film.
he's great in Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's weird because I just think about like his career a little bit when I was watching it, and thinking obviously then he was Atom in the Arrowverse
Yeah,
stuff as well.
yeah.
Like I remember that feeling like a real coup when they got him.
Mm-hmm.
Like like when he joined
Mm-hmm.
Legends of Tomorrow.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, oh, Superman, but he's just been in so many different things.
yeah. He was in
Like
Chuck for a bit as well.
he was in
Um,
Chuck for a bit, wasn't he?
yeah,
Looking at
yeah,
when 2006 Superman Returns.
and yeah,
This was 2008.
yeah.
Oh,
So
good
it
times.
wasn't long
Yeah,
up. It probably
he's
didn't
very good
film
at
it
it.
long after either.
No,
But yeah, just there is just something about this film which I was like, we have to include it just because I think it is again a really good um like a showcase for Kevin Smith's dialogue. Like I just think it's so natural, and I feel like it's one of the besides Clerks 2, it's probably one of the more like subtle humor, just like well written humor. Because Jane
yeah,
Silent Bob Strike Back is so over the top, and that's the kind of funny side of it. Um, and it's kind of the same with Mallrats. Like the things that are funny in Mallrats are pretty subtle. And I feel like this kind of falls into that same realm where he's just known how to write these characters and how to make it funny in a very, very natural way, where nothing seems outrageous or ridiculous. It all seems fairly grounded.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about this film as well, isn't it? Like we've said, like there are some outrageous moments in some of those other films. I mean, there's loads in like things like Clerks II, but this one, I don't know. It just, I don't know, like it could happen. Probably has happened. Like different versions of this.
Yeah.
Like probably not with some of the humor that they add in, but like it's there's a fair chance some friends have been like, we should just make a porno basically, and this is just Kevin again. It's probably one of those conversations he's had with people, isn't it? It's like, yeah, let's write it. I just read there that he did write the role of Zack for Seth Rogen.
Oh, cool.
Based on 40-Year-Old Virgin. Like he wrote the role for him, or he had him in mind. Yeah. So, and the female lead was written for Rosario Dawson.
Yes, I read this. And they weren't able to get it because of a conflict or something. I remember reading.
Crazy, really, because I just would have thought Seth Rogen and Elizabeth Banks just were so good together. Like it's crazy. I mean, I love Rosario Dawson as well, so it wouldn't have been a huge difference in liking the leading lady. But it's again, I thought Elizabeth Banks would have just like got the role straight away. So
yeah, because she is great, and like even just from like their first scene where it's like the two of them waking up, and you just get such a sense that these two people just know each other so well. And like the argument when like Seth Rogen walks in on her on the loo and stuff, and like that's all really good. And then like having them in the car and he heats his balls with the warmer. Like it's so well written, but you just immediately know that these two characters are just so comfortable with each other. Like that there isn't anything. So it sort of feels natural that they end up making a porno because there's like no filter between the two of them. Like they just know each other that well.
So something else was that the neither of us remember seeing any end credits, but there is a pretty significant end credits to this film. I don't think end credits were a thing back then, so it's maybe people just didn't stay. Apparently, I didn't stay, and you didn't stay.
I think I texted you about this. I think I've seen that film probably like 4 or 5 times, because I didn't see it in the cinema. I don't think, but I loved it on the first watch, and I have seen it so many times, but I've just never seen the credits until this watch, and I was like, oh,
there is like a whole thing. It is in end credits. Like, why didn't they just put it at the end of the film?
Yeah, because it is like
quite big. Because they get married. That's it, right? They get married. So
married and like start their own production company.
Company.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like an end of credits thing. Like it feels like they could have put loads of other stuff at the end credits. There's plenty of other characters they could have done something with, but it feels like they could have just done the like the I love you Miri bit and then moved on to 2 months later they're getting married and they're starting. I think it feels like a natural conclusion to a film, not an end credits thing, because there's a lot of people who probably don't know that exists.
Yeah, like
us included.
Did not know that, but it's good as well. Like that's the thing; it is like a really good sequence of events. Like it is a good piece of the story. But yeah, just it completely surprised me, and I can't even remember why I landed on it this time. I think I was possibly writing something up, and the credits just were rolling. I was like, yeah, sure, and then
because it's right at the end, isn't it? It's not.
It's
not mid credits.
Far down. But yeah, it's like so if you're watching it, stay for that because it's
stay for the credits.
An integral part of the story for you.
But do the whole credits. Don't fast forward it. You've got to start. Just treat it like you're at the cinema. So all the way through to the end.
Yes.
I also quite like the marketing. I remember the marketing quite fondly with the posters. There was some really good posters. There was one of both Seth Rogen and Elizabeth Banks, which was quite funny. But there was one where they were just stick figures.
Nice.
And the hook was that it was such a graphic film, basically, that they can't show you much more than these 2 stick figures.
Yeah.
And I remember that hooking me in, thinking like, I don't know what this. I remember thinking, oh, God knows what this is going to be like then, because of the name as well. So I think the name was a bit out there. Like people didn't like. It was a bit of a weird choice for a name.
It is for sure. Yeah, it for sure is. Like when my partner
Not
Charles
an
was
easy
like,
sell, basically. That's
yeah,
what it's like.
when Charles was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Oh, Zack and Miri Make a Porno." It's like, okay,
We're going in depth now in all the wrong areas. Like,
yeah, yeah,
so
just going for it. But yeah, it is like a. Did you know when you first saw it that it was a Kevin Smith film?
no,
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 'cause I
I
think
don't think I would have. I don't think I would have known. I mean, I probably knew that he was. I probably would have known that he was directing it or something, but I don't know if I really thought much of any link to anything because there is no link to it. I don't know. I don't even know if I knew he was directing it. I don't know.
yeah,
I probably knew he was involved in it somehow because of Jay being in it and
yeah,
Jeff Anderson and everything. So,
sure.
um, I probably would have assumed something. But again, this came out when I was at uni, so everything then nothing made sense.
Because I think that was the thing. Like, I think when I first saw it, I didn't know it was Kevin Smith because it doesn't, as you say, when we first started talking about this, that it is kind of a Seth Rogen film and that it falls in that period of time where it's like Seth Rogen was at the height
Yeah,
of,
I would have thought that's probably what my instinct would have been. That it's just
mm,
another one of those films,
yeah,
because they're all like, yeah, they all fall into that category around that time, don't they?
yeah. But then, like watching it back as part of this in depth, like as I've said, you can kind of see the View Askew influences. Like you can see Kevin Smith on it. I think.
You can tell, but it's completely different to those other films from the writing, right? Because like
Yeah,
you super bad and stuff, they're like bam one liner, bam 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 bam
yeah,
bam
yeah,
bam.
yeah,
Whereas this is like dialogue,
yeah,
joke, and then
yeah,
there's like a few. It's probably a little bit snappier than what we're used to with Kevin Smith films because it is different. Like, I
yeah,
mean, again, he intended this to be different, right? It wasn't
yeah.
supposed to be part of that universe. So
No, no, no.
he, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, this was supposed to be his like rocket into like breaking through the glass ceiling, right? Like
Yep.
bigger comedic talent and like a different. It was the Weinstein Company, I think. So like under a different umbrella, and it was supposed to like do this heavier marketing, and then it didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't do that. So he's probably natural for him to. I mean, I wonder how he came to that decision. Really, like with linking. What's his name? What is his name? Justin Long
Justin Long. Yeah. I see.
in
I
the
always
reboot
thought,
and stuff.
yeah, I always thought part of it was just kind of as we were saying earlier on that he works with similar people. And I think, because I think this is the first time he worked Justin Long and then he did Tusk
Yeah,
um, with Justin Long. And I think at that point they were like, they just worked really well together. Um, and I think the moment sort of came with like Reboot is when we get to it, obviously it's all about like him just bringing in all of his friends after a health event. Um, and I guess it was just an easy way to pull Justin Long into that
oh,
world.
yeah.
But I do wonder, like, kind of with hindsight, whether now he looks at it and kind of sees it as, yeah, that could easily just be a View Askew film, um, and whether he considers it to be,
Yeah,
or whether he still feels like it is like a standalone thing outside of that world, and it was him trying to kind of like Jersey Girl or whatever, where it's like he's tried something kind of out of the View Askew world. But I think watching it as part of this in depth, it's just I can see the sort of linkage. I can see where it can easily slot in.
yeah.
Especially, yeah, as you say, with like Jeff Anderson and Jay Muse. Like, I don't think I would have put those together on a first watch, but watching it back now, you're kind of like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can't help but see his fingerprints all over. Obviously, now can you? And obviously, because we know about it as well. So
Yeah, his wife's also in it as well.
who?
His wife, who's
Oh,
in
is
like,
he? Is she?
yeah, she's in like all the View Askew stuff, and I'm pretty sure she plays the person who gives them their name tags.
Oh, okay.
I think that's her, and she also plays uh, Dante's fiance in Clerks II.
Ah, yeah, of course, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
I know what you're talking about now.
yeah. So I guess there is that, but I don't think he's in it. I don't think Kevin Smith has a.
No, he's not in it. I don't think he's in it. I did wonder if he was in it when I was watching it back, but I don't. He doesn't pop up. I mean, if he pops up, it's a very brief cameo, like he's like giving something to someone or something. Like
yeah, I don't recall
but
seeing
he might be in the background somewhere. But it's no, I don't think he's. Again, it might have been like a decision, right? Because he's trying to make it something other than what he's normally been doing with the other films and linking them. So
because I think we said this with Clerks 2, that Clerks 2 he kind of felt like that was it, like that was the end of View Askew, like that he would leave those characters behind and that's an end note. And so I guess this is kind of his first thing. Or did he do Cop Out first? Or was Cop Out afterwards? I can't remember. But this would have been one of the first things he did after Clerks 2. So it is that kind of case of he's might feel like he's done something, but when he opened it back up with Reboot, I wonder whether it was kind of a way of saying, okay, maybe I can sort of backdoor link Zack and Miri to bring it into that world a bit more. It's just quite interesting from that kind of perspective of how he feels about it now, I guess. Now that he's kind of opened up View Askew again. Yeah.
Hopefully more rats. More
yes,
rats.
Give me more rats. Yes, I would love that. So good.
All right.
Cool.
Well, I mean, so we both enjoyed it, which is nice. So we it's going to really shift gear when we get on to the next one.
Yes.
Jay and Silent Bob Reboot.
Crazy.
So yeah, but I really enjoyed watching it again. Like I always worry sometimes that we come back around to these films, like how much I love Clerks 2. I hadn't seen it for a little bit, and like watching Clerks again and all these things, and I think, oh, well, it's not as good as I remember it. I think the only one that I've really shifted gear on is Chasing Amy.
Because you didn't enjoy it as much.
Because I didn't enjoy it as much, So way more depressing than I remembered it being.
Yeah.
So I think that's the only one so far that I've
changed.
I've changed it. I mean, I've only seen Jay and Silent Bob Reboot once, and I've only ever seen Clerks 3 once as well. But like I've said on every podcast, like Clerks 3 and me did not spark joy. So all right. Well, that is the end of this in-depth episode. Our next one, like we said, is Jay and Silent Bob the Reboot, and we will also have a pop culture episode as well coming up in the middle of this and that release. So if you want to hear more of our in-depth, either just on the View Askew universe films that we've already done, like I said, we've covered all the previous ones. We've also done in-depth on all the Batman films, and you can find us, if you search for on YouTube, if you search for Consistently OK Podcast, you can find some of our material there. Anywhere you get a podcast, you can find all our old episodes from the beginning of season 1 up until now. And you can follow us on social media, so Consistently Pod on Twitter and Instagram if you want more information, updates. We are pretty great at keeping things updated on social media, so check that out. And so look forward to the next one. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
Nick.
Thanks, dude.
It was a pleasure.
All good.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Catch you later.
Bye.